So, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome back to Usher training back in July. I thought it was kind of interesting. I preferred to do this in August, and it worked out really well last year to do it a little bit later. And this year, after I looked at the calendar and when I would potentially be gone, the only thing that worked was this week. So here we are. Because next week's Texas Tenors, and then the week after that is Ragbri, and also the first week of like real possibility for twins arriving. So otherwise, August 12th will be the day if nothing happens beforehand. So yeah, I'll be gone August 10th for sure, August 10th for about 6 weeks, coming back the week of scholarship benefit in September. So if they come earlier, I will leave earlier and I will come back earlier, but that's the plan for now. So yeah. So welcome. The last two sessions have both gotten done a little bit early, so the outlook is good for getting done a little bit early. A lot of the stuff we have to review tonight is information you've heard before in one form or another. A lot of it required by fire code to be covered on an annual basis, hence we are here. So we will get going. First of all, schedules. Hopefully by now you've all had a chance to submit your schedule. We are working on figuring that all out and making sure we have one from everybody. So if we did not get your form for some reason, you'll be hearing from us early next week. And if you don't hear from us, then you're good, because that means we have it. So we'll be doing that early next week. We'll begin making assignments next week as well. My goal is to have the schedule out by the end of July. Our plan this year is to actually email out those schedules. It'll look exactly the same, but it'll probably be attached to an email. Then you'll have the option of either responding to the email and saying, yep, these are all good, or mailing or dropping off that form. Those of you that we do not have email addresses for, or if we get some sort of message back that it was not delivered to you, we'll drop those in the mail. So that you should be getting those. And there's a handful of you who have told me you're having trouble with email right now. And so we will make sure that you get yours in the mail as well. So it's just a little bit faster. I know last year it took 4 or 5 days for those to start showing up in mailboxes after we mailed them. And it's also, every 49 cents helps a little bit. So it's just less that we send out through the mail. So that's our plan for this year. If you don't see anything by the first week August, then I would start checking with us and see what's going on. But like I said, I am now the only one left that knows how to do the schedule, so it has to be done before I go. I've taught them a lot, but haven't quite got all the details of the scheduling process taught yet. So, any questions on schedule? Maybe run into any problems there. Hopefully that was the second time in a row we've used that system. Oh, it was supposed to email you all a confirmation with your choices, and it sounds like that worked for most people. There's just a handful of people, and now as I'm standing here talking about it, I'm remembering there's 2 or 3 of you that emailed me this week and wanted a copy, and I've not sent you that yet because I forgot. So I will try to find that email and send those to you on Monday. I'm not working tomorrow, so I'll get those to you next week. Also, when we sent out the schedule, the next day we sent out an email to everyone with a copy of the contact information that we have for you in our systems and asking you to send us updates on that. And I believe many of you have replied on that as well. That will also be something we work on updating next week. So if we didn't hear from anybody, you might be hearing or getting a call from us just to update that info. And that's just kind of my annual reminder that if you would please make sure to tell us if you changed phone numbers or dropped phone numbers. We have a few people that have dropped their home number. Just make sure to get those to us so we can get them changed and taken out of our systems. This is all the same information that we use just for our general purposes, but then also for the auto calls if we cancel an event or something like that. So all of those come from the same system. New thing here at the Gallagher that affects us a little bit. I'm actually wearing an example of it right now. Towards the end of last season, we launched a new brand. And by brand, you could hear look and logo and things like that. So like our website was redesigned. We've got new shirts and a new logo for things. How this really impacts the ushers is two ways, name tags and the shirts that you guys have. So we'll be updating those designs as well. What we're going to do on the name tag side of things is the Gallagher is going to buy anyone and everyone who wants one a new name tag. We are not going to charge you for those anymore. So we'll be getting, as the fall goes on here, we'll be figuring that out. I have the company working on a design right now. Once we have the design and know some of those details, then we'll be asking for things like, well, first of all, do you want one? Because if you don't want people to know your name, that's fine. You can have a generic volunteer one. But if you want one, we'll get that for you. And then if you want your first name or first and last name or whatever, that's something I've wanted to do for a while. And the changing of the logo gave me a really great excuse to do it. We'll be giving you all one of those that want one. It'll be a magnet unless you tell us otherwise. There's a few people I know that can't wear the magnet for medical reasons, but it'll be the magnet style unless you need something else. And all of that, like I say, we'll be communicating when we need that information. The second thing would be the polo shirts. No, we're not going to tell you can't wear the ones you already have that you've paid for yourself. But we will be adding new styles. And I'm actually trying to identify a local vendor who could actually run all of that for us. So there'd basically be a place you could go and get a shirt or 2 or 10 or whatever you want. So be looking for information on that. That's going to take us some time to get together as well, but we're just not able to manage those logistics anymore. So I'm looking for a vendor that can do that for us. That would still allow you to order as little as 1. There wouldn't be a minimum order or anything like that. And my hope is if it's a local company, you'd have the option then to go pick it up. You wouldn't have to pay for shipping. So anyway, those are things that we're working on right now related to our new brand. Otherwise, in general, probably the most exciting thing about our new brand, and this all came from a process we worked through all of last year. The first part of last fall, you may remember there was a big survey that went out, and many of you got it as well, and it was all about questions about the Gallagher, things we do well, things we don't do so well. We received a lot of feedback, and that's probably the largest survey of our entire patron base and users and volunteers that we've ever done. And so that just informed a lot of things, including this branding process. And we came up with several branding elements. The biggest one that I like is Fun Plus. So we want the experience at the Gallagher to be not just fun, but like that extra thing. It might be kind of like if you think back to the Give 'em the Pickle video we all watched at some point in your being here. And so like that's the extra little thing that we do to make it extra special. You've heard me say, you know, I do want you to enjoy the show, but I'm not as concerned about that as I am as you had a good experience. That's really what it's about. So maybe the content challenged you and made you feel uncomfortable, but you had a great experience, and that's what is really important. So that's that Fun Plus. And so you might hear us mention that from time to time. Otherwise, you'll just notice that communications from us will have fancier logos, and we're getting new business cards and all kinds of fun things like that. So. Otherwise, not a whole lot has changed. There's a couple fresh coats of paint in here. They're working on the floor, as you can see. The fire door is still broken from usher meeting, if you remember that, or from the usher picnic. But at least now we can walk under it. Their temporary fix is finally to drill a hole in the ceiling and tie some wire around it. But it still has a couple of links that'll melt if there's a fire, so it's still officially a fire door. Because if there were a fire, they would melt and it would drop. So hopefully that gets fixed soon. I think that's everything for our announcements. Any general questions before we get into some of the other content? Yes?
What is usher call time for there?
Usher call time for the Texas Tenors. I've been asked that every time this week, so thank you, because I meant to write it on here. Usher call time for Texas Tenors next week is 6:15. The show is at 7:30, and I will mention I'm going to get an email out. I remember everybody that signed up for it was assigned. the only thing I wanted to mention is we're sitting right around 1,300 tickets sold. So the gallery doesn't have a whole lot of people in it. You are certainly, everyone is welcome to come. This is a big thing, and you guys can sit in the back and watch the show. That's fine with me. But I don't want anybody missing something important if they thought they had to be here. So if there's anybody that needs to be at a grandkid's something or other, go do that and tell us you can't make it, because we have plenty of ushers. But yeah, so 6:15 for 7:30 show next Wednesday. Good question. Anything else? All right, moving on. I have to remember to try to stand here, otherwise I'm going to keep walking out of the camera shot. I feel sorry for whoever has to go through this on video. Not that I don't feel sorry for everybody else that has to go through this, but... Okay, first thing. So over the course of the last few shows of the season, and again over the summer here as I occasionally encounter ushers in the wild or away from the Gallagher, one of the common things when we chat a little bit, people know that training is coming up. They sometimes mention things that we could always benefit from going over again. And pretty much every time...
You can stay in your position.
Oh, I can do it. No, it's okay. This will be all right. All right. Thank you, though. It helps me remember what I'm saying. So one of the common things that comes up is that seating. So I'm handing out a diagram of all of the seating stuff again, which is something I guarantee you've all seen before, and you've all probably sat in these seats and heard me talk about it. So we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we are just going to kind of look at it again as a refresher. And I have enough tonight. This is good news. I got to about this point yesterday and had one left. And so the people back here were like, that's okay, we'll be all right. There we go. Okay. So, as we all remember, the Gallagher Blue Dorn has 3 levels. We're getting way down to basics here. So first of all, grab that ticket that you were handed. And if you look down here at the bottom, I mean, the rest of this information is important, but of most important is what's printed on the bottom, and that tells us level, section, row, and seat. So level. I think the stories I've heard lately, the common theme has been that people make an assumption that the person walking through the various door that you're assigned belongs there. Never make that assumption. The chance that they actually belong in that door is maybe 50-50. If you're working at door 3 and 4 here in the back, like, it's more likely they belong somewhere else than they're in the right place. Because people come in the door, even people have been coming for years, come in the door and head straight for the door right in front of them. When in fact they might belong on the 2nd or 3rd level. So first of all, make sure they're on the right level. If they're not, get them sent up to 3rd. I ran into something at one of the shows in the spring. It was kind of up over in this vicinity, and as it turned out, they belonged on level 3. Well, then they didn't want to go up there. And I'm like, well, those are the seats you purchased, so that's kind of where you got to go. So make sure you're double checking that. And like I say, most importantly, don't always assume that they belong there. Obviously, you're all very good, smart customer service people. You can often tell the people that have been here 100 times and know exactly where they're going. You probably know them by name even, maybe. They're friends of yours. I'm not saying you have to stop absolutely everybody and say, give me your tickets. But I'm saying you should be checking more often than you're not, just to make sure. People don't like to ask, will you help me find my seat? That's why we're always offering them. So They believe that they can very easily find our gal J1. And maybe they can, but I'm guessing they're going to need help, and that's what we're here to do. So let's do some review. So everybody answer these as I go, a little quiz. The pit seats are the ones up front here, and the odd seats would be on the right, and the even seats on the left, and the 3-digit numbers in the center. And because we are on the main floor, the 3-digit numbers are going to start with 1. And the 01 of the 101 is going to be on the, yes, odd side. I'm screwed up because I'm facing you. Directions are always as we face the stage when we talk about right and left, odd and even. And I've heard over the course of this week, I have heard probably half a dozen different ways of remembering that. One of my favorites is that right has 5 letters, which is odd, so odds are on the right. Even has 4 letters, which is even, so even's on the left. So that's one way. There's been others that have been funnier as far as like odd people belong on the right. I don't know, like it just feels like odd people should be on the right. Whatever you want to use to remember it, fine by me. Like I say, we've not made any changes. Oh, that was the thing I forgot to mention. We have not changed anything this year on seating. We have thrown a couple of loops at you. For example, this is seat 18, between 110 and 112, because we've had to do some repair. Some of them have been labeled as we go, but this one I found out on Monday has not. So I am going to have the students walk through and try to find all of those and at least get a piece of tape or something on it for now until we can get them renumbered. But the truth of the matter is the seats are broken and falling apart and well beyond their life expectancy. The manufacturer doesn't even exist, or this product doesn't even exist anymore. We cannot get parts. So we're down to doing the best we can with what we have, which is also going to include maybe pulling some chairs out of the balcony and bringing them down here to make repairs, because this level is the worst. Mezzanine is a little better, and gallery, some of them are like brand new because they only get sat in when we're full. So we're working through that. You all know from being here for a few years that we've had more and more complaints about seats, and they get kind of sprung and lean forward and things like that. So Sean, our most recent hire backstage, has been doing a lot of work on that this summer. He pulls these whole things out and welds them, and I mean, it's all kinds of jimmying to keep them together. So we're making a lot of improvements, but like I say, we are swapping out some of the seats. But so if you find something out of place, you might have to do a little more context of, oh wait, what is it in between? Just in case we don't get those all labeled. But we're gonna get labeled what we can. What I'm more concerned about is throughout the year when they have to make repairs, we might miss a couple, so keep that in mind. Okay, so double letters in the front, that's the pit. That's called the pit because it's where the orchestra would be if we had a pit orchestra, which hasn't happened in a while now yet. But so center pit, left pit, right pit. We always abbreviate LRC, so left pit, right pit, center pit. The rest of this floor is the orchestra. Some people get confused because the entire level is referred to as the orchestra. When it comes to ticketing, we're talking about just the stuff in front of the rail. Everything behind the rail is dress circle, which is obviously abbreviated DC. So RDC, CDC, LDC, and then the W for wing, left wing, right wing. That's what the W means. And I think, they are just an extension of R and S. The numbering doesn't start over or anything. The best rule of thumb is always to take a look at things in your area when you get assigned. We are working on, I've made a lot of progress on it today actually. We're working on new maps for the doors that'll be an entire seat map. And so you'd be able to kind of look right at what's hanging on the wall, and it's going to have the numbers of everything right around you. So that's a good refresher if you need it. And that's also going to be the emergency maps for evacuation and where all the things are, fire extinguisher, fire pole box, AED, all of those emergency things will be on those diagrams. So I'll keep working on those throughout the summer. Hopefully we'll have them in place before shows start, but otherwise soon thereafter. And that project's only been going on for a year, so making progress. Mezzanine. The biggest trick of the mezzanine is the boxes. Remember, anything in the low numbers of A's or B's, like A 1 through 20, and B about 1 through 20, would be in 2 to 3 locations on the mezzanine. For example, the Gallagher box is A2 through 8, I think. I think there's 4 seats. No, there's 5 seats in there. 2 through 10? 12? There's 6 seats in there? I guess I haven't looked at one of these in a while. Yeah, so that's 2 through 12 in the Gallagher box. There's also an A2 through 12 right here and over there. So if we were looking only at the row and the seat, we have a 1 in 3 shot of getting it right. That is even if they're on the mezz. If they belong on the gallery, there's also A's and B's up there. So, question? Somebody was, no. And then on the right side, we have the same thing with the odd number of seats. So do make sure, especially if you're assigned at these doors, that you're double checking the box versus not a box. The boxes always have the B in them. So mezzanine left, box 3, mezzanine left, box 1. Row A is the front box here, row B is the second. So we now kind of call this one box with 2 rows. If you've been here long enough, you remember when it was 2 boxes. So try to forget that if you haven't already. 1 box, 2 rows. Obviously, mezzanine, right mezz, L mezz, C mezz. The 3-digit numbers in the middle start with 2 because it's the second level. And then on the gallery, again, very much the same. The back of the gallery, R gal, C gal, L gal, right, left, center. The gallery is where we have a few seats that have that W again for wing. Those are just the end seats on the front row because there's a few extra seats that stick out. And in the ticketing system, for whatever reason, they had to be built as their own little section, so they had to give it a name. And we decided on wing. So there's not really a good reason why it has to be that way, other than that's what the ticketing system required for programming. An update this year, we did learn doors 2 and 5 on the gallery. People that had seats on R gal and L gal of D and E, I think it was, or maybe it was E and F. Anyway, those first couple rows that you can't get to from door 2 or 5, and that was the door they were telling people to go in. So we identified that, like I say, this spring, and Stacy went in and fixed that in the ticketing system. So hopefully we've got that fixed. So we went like 5 years of that being wrong. And I remember over time, occasionally people be like, yeah, there was something weird with door numbers, but we didn't have enough information to really get it figured out. Well, what happened in that case is the same ushers got assigned to that door like 3 shows in a row. And so it was happening to them over and over and over. And I walked by one night, walking around the building, and they said, hey, come here. And so we had enough information that I could go back, email Stacy. She looked it up and said, oh yeah, both of those rows are completely wrong, and it's wrong on the other side too, and she fixed it. So if you notice patterns like that, the best thing is probably to jot down some notes so that we have as much information as we can, and we can get that over to the ticketing folks to get it fixed. Because we have one shot at the very start of the year to make any of those changes. So it's too late to make any changes to the ticketing programming for the entire year because they're all built, they're all on sale, it's a done deal. So that's the other thing is even if we identify those problems, it's going to be next April when we start programming 16, 17 that we can make any changes. So that ship has sailed, so to speak. Gallery, the boxes, again, you have the chance for confusion with the duplicate rows and letters, rows and numbers. So as long as you're making sure to check for box seats. This is even more of a price differential this year. You may have noticed we didn't necessarily increase all the prices, but we did increase the prices in the gold zone somewhat significantly. And we changed around some of the zone 1 gold we moved more seats. So the gold zone is smaller, but the price is higher. So there's more seats in the zone 1 seating area, but it did kind of change things around. And I think there, although nobody realized it at the time, but there ended up being a grand total of 6 seats that actually went up in price zone, which we were not intending to do. But it's like the last 3 seats of the orchestra right here. And so there were 3 seats that went from a lower zone to a higher zone. Doreen's nodding her head. They're her seats. I remember when Jim came in, and but otherwise the rest of the seats went to a lower zone or stayed the same. So just an FYI on that. That did raise a question on Monday about people moving, like if they want to move down, if they want to move closer. And I just kind of the general reminder to folks that because we have the differential in pricing, the idea is that you're going to sit where you were assigned to sit. If people move a row or 2 or down a little bit in the gallery, I mean, that's not a big deal. We do have to be careful of folks moving down to the lower levels. But then also know that occasionally Steve stands up here in front of the whole crowd and says, hey, come on down. And at that point, you can just throw all ideas out the window, because if they want to come down then, they can come down. Otherwise, we really shouldn't do a lot of that for fear that somebody else might be sitting there. But if you know the gallery has like 8 tickets sold in it, then it's very unlikely you're moving anybody into somebody else's seat. But if, say, it's a sold-out show, then anybody you move is going to be in somebody else's spot. So be mindful of that. Questions on seating, observations, things you want me to share? Yes?
I see it says obstructed view on these.
Yes.
Does that say that on the ticket too, so they know?
It doesn't print on the ticket, but those seats actually, the 2 box seats, actually the stage boxes, so the ones right up here on stage right now, those are all killed in our ticketing system, so they do not get sold generally. I mean, the Gallaghers have rights on their box, so you might see people in there, but otherwise, those are the last tickets to be made available to sale, because we often do not know if they'll be obstructed or not. The gallery ones with the speaker towers, speaker clusters, are almost always obstructed, and that's why it says that on the map. So they are supposed to be told, the ticketing system, it doesn't print on the ticket, but the ticketing system does have them marked as obstructed view, and the ticket seller is supposed to make it clear to them that they're buying an obstructed view seat. And by obstructed view, we mean you might be able to see, but you might not, or you're going to be looking around the speaker cluster. And that all depends on the show, because obviously if the symphony is doing something, but well, that's not even true anymore, because the symphony does a lot of multimedia stuff. It used to be, so now I guess it would be like the School of Music shows, that the speakers might be out, but more and more we're finding that the speakers are almost always in, and therefore that's always an obstruction. But we do that for all of the stage boxes. So all 3 of these boxes on both sides, on all levels, those are not available for sale until we're sold out. And we kind of sell those last. And that's not, so the rest of these are open and available, but the ones up front are not.
Are they, because those are bad too. And you have to
And they're the Zone 4 cheapest ticket because of that.
tell people that it's going to be, you're not going to have a clear view without.
It is a part of their training. The only reason I hesitate is because this is a student staff that changes over a lot, and so I can't guarantee that they're going to tell them every time, but it is a part of their training. They do take them around the hall and show them the various areas, and so hopefully if they're doing their job right, they are explaining that to them, but it's not perfect. And as we know from any time we've had people sitting there, it's probably all that was left, and they sometimes are disappointed. So we just do the best we can. If we, in the back of the dress circle, we usually have some company holds that don't always get used, and so we have a couple of options if somebody's really upset. But ultimately, it was probably because that's what was left, and that's the best we could do. So, But like I said, it varies from seller to seller. I've heard a couple of them be really good about explaining it, and then I'm sure there's a handful of them that don't even remember. So, any other questions or comments on ticketing and seating? Yes?
I don't remember which shows they were, but they came with just a printout from their computer, and they didn't always have all the information. Has that been improved on?
Print-at-home tickets is a little better. We're seeing more and more of them as more people are getting comfortable with the technology. It is supposed to print all the information on it. It's programmed to do so. The difference is, all the different computer systems, all the different printouts. It's a PDF. Some people, quite often you can open a PDF and everything's all kind of garbled. And I've even seen some of the tickets come printed and like there's a barcode there, but all of the things that should be letters are just like random characters and symbols. So if you have a print-at-home ticket that's not readable or doesn't have the information on it, you can have them go to the box office, and the box office can look up their information. Because if nothing else, they could scan the ticket and find the information that way. But it is supposed to all be on there. So if something's missing, then we can check with the box office to find out where they should be. The barcodes are all the same, so I mean, it might still scan, but yeah, checking to make sure that the seat and everything is readable would be important. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. If the date's missing, I would scan it, and because if it's a wrong day, the scanner's going to catch that. But I think the bigger problem too is when the seat information isn't there, and I've run across that as well. There's also, to get really into the details, there's a way that you can pull that up on the scanner after you scan it, but that's like scanner training level 2, which we've not spent a lot of time with. But if you're interested, I could show you sometime. But there is a little thing you can click on the scanner, and it will show you all that information from the last ticket scanned. But that's, like I say, that's scanner training level 2. So we haven't gotten there. Anything else? Good questions. Yes?
What are the letters between the seat number and the price? What are those letters for?
Between the seat number and the price, that's the code for the ticket. Like if it's adult, like mine says AD, which means adult. There's a Y for youth. There's a C for comp. So it's the ticket type. So it doesn't so much matter on where to seat them. It's more what they paid for it. So I'm glad they switched to AD. Some of you might remember it used to be FU, which stood for full price. And I'm like, can we change that, please? All of our tickets said FU on them. Okay. So we learn. We keep, every year, ticketing system. So another thing that's come up a lot, and people mention this too in the fire safety training we'll get to next, accessible seating. ADA does require that we have accessible seating in all price areas, in all zones, which we do. We are compliant with that. A lot of times people remember that we have it down here, and this is the most common, but we also have it here in the back of the 2 levels. You remember because of the wheelchair lift, and then on the edges of 2 and 5 on the mezzanine and gallery. So we do have that covered. They are able to purchase in all those. And those are also marked as accessible seating. So we can't sell those to non-accessible, like people that don't need it for accessibility, until everything else is sold. That's part of the ADA compliance. Also, every seat in this vicinity can be reached without going up a stair. So this is, again, this is where a lot of that seating happens, but we do have the ability on all levels for that. Also, there's been a lot of talk lately about service animals in the news. So somebody asked me that question, which is also a good question. Obviously, service animals, again, ADA says that service animals are allowed anywhere that the public is allowed. Obviously, we allow the public here, so therefore we allow service animals, and also service animals in training, which we do have some folks in this area who help train the service animals, and they do bring them to the Gallagher as a part of that training. So we've had it happen at least a handful of times that I can think of, and they'll either have it sit under their feet or right next to them in the aisle. And that's totally fine. So
So they don't have to sit in the aisle?
they don't have to. That would be my preference. My preference is that they would sit in the aisle, but they. Well, the animal is a little bit of an exception because of that. So, but no, yes, the aisles are supposed to remain clear, and that's where the question came up once before. Was I thought we can't put it? Well, I would prefer that they not be, but yeah, if for some reason they can't go in the aisle, then they might have to be, or that they can't go under their feet, then they might have to be. But it would be our preference that they be here at their feet because the aisles need to remain clear and unobstructed. So we would ask that they do that, but if for some reason that was not going to work for them, it is what it is. We have to be, as I say, all of the fire codes and things, we have to be as safe as most safe as we can be. So in some cases, it can't be completely free and clear, the aisle, so we keep it to one side, or we minimize it as much as we can to minimize that risk. So, yep.
When a person has a service animal, when they place their order, do they let them know that they have a service animal? Because, what happens if the person's in the middle and it can get pretty tight?
Yeah. That's a good question. I do not believe so. I would hope that they'd try to accommodate for that by maybe requesting an aisle or something like that, which would certainly make it easier. But no, at present we do not reserve a seat for them or anything like that. That's a good question. I may look into the best practice on that, because I know for a larger wheelchair we will kill an extra chair sometimes, but then that is only if they tell us it's an oversized chair. Which we don't often get that much information. So, yep.
Because looking at the way the seats are presented down here at least, you take the one on the end here, and there's plenty of room down on this without being in the aisle
Yep.
for a dog to be
Yep.
right next to their, handling.
Yep. I think if they did share that information with us at the time of ordering, we would. Hopefully, that's actually something I'll check with them on their training. We'd hopefully be able to put them in a better location. It's possible that they might ask to. I know sometimes we have folks who, they ordered them now and then, ended up having surgery or in a car accident or something, and they have a big boot on their leg, and so they ask to be moved. And so we work with those kinds of requests all the time. Ideally, they would make that request in advance and we can move them around. But sometimes they just kind of walk right in and want to be changed. So. We just do the best we can with that. So.
Chris, that kind of brings up a question too. I've had several patrons that come in and they have a boot or something and they're like, I bought this ticket, I want to sit here, but I can't do these steps. And you try to accommodate them, but you can't.
Right, you just do the best you can. I mean, in the end, if we're offering to accommodate them in a different place, but they don't want to do that, well, I mean, we've offered. So, I mean, that's all we can do. Sometimes the other thing we run into is that like maybe all the aisle seats are taken, and so they're just like, fine, I want to go, so they just take, and then when they get here, they're gonna just try to get us to change it. People do that a lot, actually, and so again, we just do the best we can. Like that's know that. We always do have a couple seats here and there that for whatever reason we're holding. We officially by contract have 4 seats on the end of like row K or L that are always kind of our emergency seats. But now sometimes, because they're called the executive director's seats, sometimes Steve promises them to people and so they're not available. But we do have some options sometimes, so that's why checking with the box office. And we can see if there's any seats on hold that we can put them in to try to accommodate that. But ultimately, in the end, if we don't have anything that accommodates it, then they have the choice of the seat they were assigned or, yeah, that's kind of, we just kind of go case by case really on a lot of that stuff. And honestly, I mean, that's why we have ushers and not just like 5 people to point, is because, there's tons of scenarios. So good questions. Let me check the time here. We're doing pretty good. I am going to go ahead and move on to the next section, only so that we can get done in a timely manner. If you do have more questions on that, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. I just want to get everybody out here at a decent time. So, next up, crowd management. So I can't remember if it was 2 years ago or just last year, maybe 2 years ago, where we first started training people on crowd management. This is probably the most recent thing to be done in fire code stuff, what they call the life safety or crowd safety. I took those slides out of the presentation, but you all remember we talked about some theaters back in, 1900 whatever, and none of the fire exits, they were chained and locked, and so there was a big fire. People couldn't get out. Lots of people died. It was a horrible tragedy. And through that came lots of fire safety features in theaters, including the big fire curtain that we have that drops and closes the stage. We have sprinklers, we have smoke detectors, we have lots of exits. We have the advantage of our building being only 15 years old, which means we have an awful lot of these things that some theaters don't have any of. For example, the Civic Center, which has 2,700 seats, 1,000 more than us, does not have a fire alarm system, or they didn't 8 years ago. They may have gotten one now. The fire alarm system was not code in 1979 when the Civic Center opened, and therefore they didn't have to put one in. They did have to put one in when they added offices above the stage in 1993, but they did not extend it to the rest of the building, so that was always my favorite. The good news was, though, you had a show with pyrotechnics set off the fire alarm and nobody knew it, except for me. That was an advantage. Okay. So yes, fire code requires that we review this on an annual basis. That's why we're going to talk about it tonight. I do know that many of you have gone through it before, but it is important to review to make sure we're all on the same page should we have an emergency that we need to deal with. Yes, the best safety device on campus or anywhere in an assembly space is a alert, well-equipped, and well-trained staff. And that's why we're doing this. So who is a crowd manager? All of you are crowd managers. Welcome aboard. I hereby deputize you. Crowd management is the way to talk about the movement of people in an emergency. Obviously, we just talked about getting them in orderly, getting them where they belong. In an emergency, it has to be just as orderly to get them out in a safe manner. We also are all responsible for making sure that the building is operated in a safe condition. So if you observe things that you believe not to be safe, either through this training or just things that don't look right, it's important that you report that information to us. And they say, if you see something, say something. If something seems out of place, something doesn't seem right, bring it up to the floor captain, the house manager, somebody, pass that word along so that we can look into it. So crowd managers are required by the International Fire Code to be provided in a ratio of 1 to 250 in all assembly spaces. So we're required to have a minimum of 1650, like 2, 4, 6, 5, 6 crowd managers. However, we've extended that to everybody because number one, it's a good idea, and number two, when the Dome has any sort of event that has lots of people, they need like 80 crowd managers. And so oftentimes they will come and ask us, and this way I can say, hey, they've already had training. If anybody wants to come over and work a concert, last time I had a grand total of 15. But know that we will always be asked because we're trained crowd managers. So as I said, a lot of the fire code things, even more specifically for theaters, have come out of tragedies. We won't review all of those tonight. But that is the reason for having these rules and reviewing them. So, what's our plan to get the crowd's attention in an emergency? Well, obviously, the fire alarm may go off. They can generally hear that in here. But there's plenty of times where what's going on in here is going to be much louder than the fire alarm system, and people are just going to kind of be confused. So, The first thing that we would do is you guys might hear the alarm, identify the alarm. As crowd managers who are here on a regular basis and participate in the fire drill every year, you know what the alarm sounds like. So you know when that strobe starts blinking up there on the wall. Where is it? Up there on the wall. Sorry, I pointed the wrong place. And some noise starts coming out of there, that's the fire alarm. So you're going to jump up and open those doors even before we've even stopped the show, because you know what's going on. Other people might also notice that. They may begin to get out of Dodge. And the idea is that the evacuation begins immediately. So if you have folks leaving before we've even stopped the show, let them go. Lead them out. We begin evacuating immediately. We always assume that the alarm is real until we can positively prove that it is not. So we do not assume it's a false alarm. We don't anything until we can go to the fire panel, confirm what the source of the alarm is, and actually go to that location and prove that it's not a fire. But I'll tell you, our number one priority is evacuation. So if there's nobody extra to go check that out, then we just keep evacuating until public safety gets here and they can figure it out. Our primary goal and objective is to get everybody out and begin the evacuation process. So the show will stop, an announcement will be made, and then more folks will start to evacuate, but that's our procedure. We'll turn the lights on, we'll stop the show, and tell people where to go, so to speak. Pre-event things. So we've talked a lot about the aisles. There were questions on that already tonight. The doors, you have to make sure that they open and they work. So if you run into any doors that that the latches won't work or anything like that, any sort of problem, that's stuff that we need to know about. Wires that aren't taped down, equipment that got left in here, like a giant road case sitting in the aisle or something like that. All these things are things that we need to know right away so that we can have one of the technicians come and take care of it, or whatever we need to do. If the handrail on the mixed position got forgotten, that needs to be put back in. These are all things that create unsafe environment, and we need to try to remedy all of those before we let people in here. So that's everyone's job, to point those out. I would rather have 10 people tell me that something isn't right than not know and have it be a problem in an emergency. The last slide on that page, know where devices are located. Again, that's part of updating these maps so that you can see there's fire pole stations throughout the hall in here, as well as on the main floor by all of the exits out of the building. And then there's smoke detectors. I mean, there's hundreds of smoke detectors in this building. They just tested them all a couple weeks ago, and it took them a day and a half. So it's an extensive fire alarm system, and that's why it can also take a while to figure out where the alarm's coming from. But any one of those things could trigger. We also know when we go to the panel, we know how many places have triggered. So if there was actually smoke and we had 10 or multiple smoke detectors giving us smoke alarms, then we're going to pretty quickly identify that it's a pretty big deal and be sharing more information about what's going on. If it's one pull station at this door over here, then it's more likely to be a false alarm.
Chris,
Yes.
some of the shows have pyrotechnics and stuff. Smoke alarms then, are they?
Yes, we do. Whenever we use smoke, fog, or haze on the stage, we do have a bypass built into our fire alarm system. There are 4 or 5 sensors in the vicinity of the stage and in the ventilation system that are bypassed for 4 hours. And so we activate that an hour before the show, and then it will automatically reset 4 hours later. So that's something that we do on a regular basis. And that got programmed into our system after the Follies incident, where we had a fire alarm and had to clear everybody out on a hot day in July. That was caused by theatrical haze and a malfunctioning sensor. And so that's why we had that functionality built in. So yes, anytime you see that kind of effect on stage, we have bypassed the smoke alarm system for that general immediate vicinity. It is a grand total of like 6 sensors of the hundreds that we have. It's 2 in the ventilation system and 4 in the vicinity of the stage. They're actually located in those 2 rooms back there and then up at the very top. So there's 2 sensors up at the top and 2 in those back rooms that get bypassed. And then, like I say, 2 in the ventilation system. And that's strictly in the ventilation system that serves the stage. We have separate ventilation for the hall and the lobby and the backstage. I mean, we have 6 different ventilation systems in the building. And so it's all designed to be just the stage one. So yeah, it's very localized to make it as safe as possible. Now I skipped around. Okay. So things that we should always be looking at and aware of, exits are unlocked, unblocked, signed, and open easy. Storage, clean, orderly, not excessive. This most obvious one is program boxes, but also if they've loaded in a show and put a bunch of things in the hallway over here, for sure it needs to all be on one side of the hallway. We would first like to find out if we can put it somewhere else and not blocking the hallway at all, but sometimes we find out that there's nowhere else for it to go. And so we just keep it to one side or the other. We've had the same conversation with catering. We asked them to try to keep their stuff to all to one side so that in an emergency we could still use that hallway and get out. Capacity is limited, does not exceed the number posted. This is a pretty easy one for us. We're a fixed seating capacity venue, so our capacity is the number of seats in your area. So we can't have people sitting on the floor. We can't have people crowding around and just kind of standing and watching. A person or 2 at the back for whatever reason for a few minutes is fine, but it's not a permanent answer, so nobody should be standing there watching the entire show, except obviously the 2 crowd managers / ushers. You're the same thing. The 2 crowd managers assigned to that door are obviously, if you have to stand because there's no other spot, that's allowed, but we don't need extra people. Aisles, free and clear at all times. We talked about that. Protection, fire extinguishers. If you know how to use a fire extinguisher and you happen to see a small fire, feel free to take action as you are so trained. If not, then at least pull the alarm on your way out. But unless it's obstructing your way out of the building, we do ask that you not necessarily waste the time to try to put out a fire because it can double in size every few seconds. And if you're not certain that you could put it out, don't spend the time to try. Just evacuate and work on getting everybody else out. So before the event, again, if you notice anything, exits are blocked, are the lights on or not on? Is something right or wrong with that? You guys, again, many of you have been doing this for a number of years. You know when things are not right or out of place or something's missing. Keep reporting those things. You're all been very good about telling us when doors are out. We found out this week that the vestibule light over here is out and over there on the mezzanine and gallery. So now we know we can get those fixed by next week. At least they better. I told the tech guys about it today. So again, you've always been good about that, but make sure that we know about that so we can get bulbs changed. And in some cases, we might be able to come get it done before the show even starts. So, something like a light bulb out over here, which makes that pretty unsafe, we might be able to get somebody up there to change it quick before we open the doors. So that's why it is important to tell us these things when you see them. During the event, what do we do? Obviously, monitor the occupant load, people in and out. The aisles, making sure they maintain clearance. Open flames are prohibited on campus. This includes smoking. So we don't really have a problem with that in the building because it's been a long time since any buildings have allowed smoking in them. This was a change a couple years ago to smoke-free campus. So basically what I tell people if I'm asked is that as long as you're outside away from the building, and by away from the building I mean past the little driveway and out towards University Avenue, you should be fine. I don't know a whole lot of public safety folks or anybody who's going to hassle you out there for having a smoke. So we have artists that go out back behind here and hide behind the dumpster, but that's not really for patrons. Patrons would stay out to the front over there. But they do have to be well away from the building to make sure they're compliant there. Yep. As I understand, that's a good question. I'll have to look into that. I have not been asked that yet, but that is a good question. E-cigarettes. They're not allowed either. Okay, so they have the same rules as regulars. I'll take them outside. But it's just water vapor. No, go. It's a smoke-free campus. That's considered smoking. I can get behind that. All right. It talks here about a safety message been announced. We've been about 50-50 on having our safety message announced. Our goal this year is to get it done at every event because it's required. So Sean and I have been working on that, and we should have that ready to go for the fall semester. So what should you do if an evacuation becomes necessary? We talked about this kind of already. Know the sound of the fire alarm, an evacuation notice, and act quickly and orderly to evacuate people in your assigned area. Know a second way out of your venue. I think a lot of us know lots of different ways out. Obviously, there's 6 different ways out from this level, or you could even head up the stairs and across the stage if you had to. So there's lots of options down here. We're lucky to have, again, 6 options on all levels. It'd be a little bit harder to get to some of these from the middle, but if you had to, that would be another way out. We have the 4 main stairwells on each side that take people down. So we've got 2 evacuation stairwells here plus the main staircase, and then we have an evacuation stairs and the staircase by the elevator on that side. So we have lots of ways down to the main floor and then out either the back of the building. Those are the doors people know the least about, but there are doors out the back of the building here from either one of these aisles. And I'm talking about the hallways out there. And then obviously the lobby has lots of different options as well. You can go straight out here, to the left, to the right, that way. So if there's a whole lot of people in front of one door, pick another. Obviously the primary exit for everybody right here is this one. But if everybody's here and you're in the last couple rows over there, I would go the other way. Unless there were people back there too. So whatever you got to do to get out in an orderly and safe manner. We know at the end of the event that everybody gets out pretty quickly. The only thing that would change that is in an emergency, people are probably going to freak out a little bit. So just keep calm and keep them moving. That's what's important.
I've been sitting here thinking, what if this happened during Kaleidoscope? How are we going to get all those kids out and have them together at the end?
Do the best we can. Yeah. Actually, they're one of my best scenarios because they go through fire drills a lot at school, and I would hope that they would actually be better about staying with their class and things like that. But we would just want to take them in as much as we can and know that we're going to all go to the same place and that we can kind of group people out. But the primary thing is getting everybody out. So
But you would just be taking them out through the door you're assigned to, right?
yes. Yeah, you'd just be working to get right through.
Whoever is there.
Yep. Yep, we'll just keep taking them and we'll all regroup at another spot. But the primary goal is to get them all out of the building safely, and then we'll regroup and make sure everybody's accounted for. Yeah. Yeah. And be extra prepared for the teachers to freak out in that scenario. But all you can do is assure the teacher that we're trained in this, we're doing the best we can, we will get everybody put back together out there. So. I would also say on Kaleidoscope Day, there's a lot of full-time staff here, so we're going to be able to identify the source of that alarm the fastest of anything. That's the plus side. On a night show, there might only be a couple of us around. It would take longer to source the alarm. On a Kaleidoscope Day, I can tell you that I'm going to be at that fire panel pretty darn fast if I'm here. So that's the good news of if it is a false alarm, we'll be able to deal with it faster. Your responsibilities, again, provide the safest environment possible for occupants, report any safety violations as you see them, take advantage to make the building as safe as possible every day, and remember that your actions will make the difference between life and death, potentially. For those of you that do have a radio from time to time, floor captains do this on a regular basis. I know there were several shows last year where we randomly handed somebody a radio and said, hey, go cover the gallery. So if you do end up with a radio at some point, remember, if you have to use that in emergency, to try to keep it concise, clear, and remember to tell people where you are. One of the most common things I found in an emergency is they'll say, we have a problem up here. Well, now the only thing I know is that you're not on the main floor. But so be specific. You know, I'm at the gallery outside door 4, and I had somebody fall, and we need some help up here. You know, you don't have to go into great detail about what kind of injuries are and such like that. But knowing that somebody has fallen versus we have a problem, and knowing as specific location as you can give us, you know, gallery outside door 4 or something like that, that helps us get there more quickly and figure out what's going on. Because if somebody has fallen, then we might right away be calling for public safety just so that we have somebody to help deal with that. So I don't think we need to review per se because we kind of just reviewed. Questions on crowd management? Yes. They should. The elevator doesn't immediately quit working when the fire alarm goes off. The elevator is tied to sensors located right outside on each 3 levels. And so if any of those sensors detect smoke or heat or anything in the vicinity of the sensor, then the elevator is going to quit working. But yes, in an emergency, somebody pointed out actually that the fire alarm system says do not use the elevator. And that's true for everybody except like those with wheelchairs who have to use it or those that can't do the stairs. So priority would be given solely to those folks who absolutely have to use the stairs or use the elevator. And I would try it first. The first thing I would do is try to take them down the elevator. If the elevator is not coming, then the second thing I would do is try to get them into that evac chair and push down the stairs. And if that were not available, or if the evac chair was already taking somebody else, then I would go into one of these side stairwells that has a little more protection until the fire department or somebody could come and make a rescue on that. That's kind of the order of things that I would recommend there.
So when you take them in there, do you stay with them then?
You talk for the wheelchair lift?
No, into the side part.
Oh, into the side thing. And that depends. You don't have to.
But you better tell
But we got to tell, right, exactly. So you might have to leave them and tell someone, and then we might send somebody to go wait with them. But yeah, make sure we know that there are people in those locations. But no, I mean, in the end, you also have to evacuate. So, but we just have to make sure that we know that we need to go back and get them. The other thing is that's going to vary from time to time too. So if we've confirmed that there is some sort of emergency in the building, you know, again, we need to know, and we'll probably go back with one of those evac chairs, not even necessarily waiting for the fire department. But the first thing the fire department's going to do when they get here is evacuate anybody who cannot be evacuated otherwise. So that's the first thing they're going to do is go make those rescues and get the rest of the people out. So. Good questions. Yep.
If you do put people on the elevator, will it shut down midway? Will they get dragged?
No. If it started to alarm midway, it would return them. It would take them down to the main floor. And then if the alarm's in the main floor, then I'm not exactly sure, but it's all programmed in to avoid them getting stuck. So nobody seems to know exactly how it was programmed. Just story of my life in this building, but that's what we believe to be true based on how it's supposed to work. We are working on developing some tests for some of those things so we can know for sure what it's going to do. Like for example, some point late this summer, I think, or maybe sometime in the fall, we're going to kill the power to the building, let the emergency generator kick in, and set off the fire alarm to make sure it works because nobody knows for sure if it does or not. So if we lose power, nobody knows for sure that the fire alarm system even works. But the only way to really test that is to make the building lose power. So we're trying to figure out a time to do that, but we also want to do it at night so we can see how dark it really gets in here on emergency power. So another question, a good one that came up earlier this week, when we talk about evacuation and emergencies and all sorts of things, and people said, well, there's so many other scenarios or emergency things that could happen now. And the one question was, well, what about like an act of terrorism or an active shooter or something like that? And I say, well, all of our training and all of the stuff that we look at and read about as in relation to crowd management doesn't so much concern itself with what might happen, because there's only 3 ways to respond. No matter what, there's only 3 ways to respond. We either evacuate, get out, or shelter in place, stay right here, or we might shelter down in the basement because of like a tornado or weather emergency. So those are really the only 3 ways that we're going to handle it. And we have to determine in the situation, in the scenario, with the information that we have, which one of those that we are going to recommend. The specific example of like an active shooter on campus, the training we've had relates to communicating the information that we have and then giving folks the option to leave if they want, or staying here to shelter in place, and then we would lock things down and try to limit access as much as possible. Because there are so many different possibilities in a scenario like that, it really comes to be that you just kind of work out what everybody thinks is safe. It becomes kind of a we're all in this together sort of situation, and you figure it out. The active shooter training, if anybody's been through that, the one I went to anyway, and it showed a lot of things from Virginia Tech and other places. People actually built like, giant mountains of office furniture to block doorways and things like that. I mean, they really just figured out whatever they could that made them feel more safe. There's a lot of ways that those scenarios can play out. It can take hours to, return to secure. But the thing is, you just can't make a lot of assumptions. You can only tell people the information you know. Because if you think about it, you don't know, are they the only one? Are they working with others? There's been some scenarios where they've gone in and set off the fire alarm and then, shot at people as they were evacuating. Anything's possible, but we concentrate on how we would respond and hope for the best. So, any other questions on that? All right. The next 2 things we have left. We might be done the earliest of all the sessions here. This is great. So the 2 things that we have left to do, well, let me make sure that's the 2 things we have left to do. Yes. The 2 things we have left to do are a couple of drill type things. The first one is we're going to go down together to the basement and kind of review our shelter location for severe weather, well, namely tornado. Because for all other forms of severe weather, this is safe enough. But for a tornado, it is not because of the roof. The roof is likely not to hold up in a tornado. It would either come down or go away. So neither of which is is a good scenario for those of us sitting here. So we'll take a look at that and then kind of review the ways that you can get down there, because there's really only a couple. We do not have a completely open basement. It is only like a hallway that runs over there, and then underneath the stage is all we have. The rest of it is like concrete walls and dirt. So why, when they built this building, they didn't build a giant hole, I'll never know, but they didn't.
They didn't ask you.
Right. Well, yeah, they didn't ask me a lot of things. Storage is always an afterthought. But and then after that, we will split up to the various levels based on the ticket that you have there. You'll go find that location, and then we'll do our fire drill from there. So we will not be coming back to where you're sitting right now, because when we do the fire drill, you'll head outside. We'll meet over in front of Gilchrist like we have in the past. And then from there, I will come out. We'll ask if there were any questions or problems with the fire drill, and then we'll be done. Okay? Any other questions in general before we move along? I think I just got a question. It was my wife. It's not from somebody here. So, all right. Ashley,
Yep.
do you want to hit the stop button on that thing? I don't think we ran out of time yet. Doo-doo-doo.